Day, Barrister Kenneth Okonkwo. You're welcome once more to NjenjeMedia TV.
Good day, Njenje. It's nice having you again.
Thank you very much for having me too.
Thank
And
you.
let's quickly look at the President Tinubu's 1 year in office. Could you give us a review of the last 365 days plus? Where do you think we are? The promises made, do you think we are better off, or do you think we are heading backwards?
The last 365 days have been days of torture, degrading and inhuman treatment, days of misery, deprivation, degradation, disappointment of Nigerians in anything that has to do with this government. Good governance, for instance, is the effective, transparent, and accountable management of public resources and affairs. It is a set of principles that ensure that power is exercised in a democratic, responsive, and inclusive manner that makes government responsive to the citizens of the people. When you check all these things, you discover that the basic elements of good governance include transparency, accountability, participation, responsiveness, rule of law, human rights, anti-corruption, equity and inclusiveness, efficiency and effectiveness. These are elements of good governance. So for a leader to be able to have this good governance, he has to have knowledge, he has to have charisma, and he has to have integrity. These things are lacking in the first 1 year of this government. Every citizen wants his country to perform because nobody will be spared of any economic, social upheaval. Nobody will be spared. So everybody, no matter what opposition say, everybody prays for the success of the government. But unfortunately, we have an incompetent and reasonably corrupt government in power. And the last 1 year has just shown it.
What informed your choice of word that we have an incompetent and corrupt government?
Don't take my words for it. Take the words of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria that said that this government and its policies have made more than 50% of the manufacturing plants to collapse in the past 1 year. And these are the reasons they gave. High interest rate, hyperinflation, frequent policy somersault and flip-flop, multiple charges, astronomical energy costs, and toxic operating environment. These are their reasons. And I'm going to break it down. And let me use this to show you a display of incompetence. Let's talk about inflation. Now, this government is incompetently thinking that what we have is demand pull inflation, meaning when too much money is chasing too few goods, then you have inflation. And in this case, the solution is trying to suppress demand. In other words, reduce the amount of money in the hand of people so that they will not be going to buy irrelevant things, pushing up the price. But that's not what we're suffering. That's why the Minister of Finance will come and go and increase interest rates more, making it more difficult for the manufacturing companies to access capital. What we are suffering is stagflation. No money. And yet, the price of goods are high. And what brings it? High cost of production. So what the inflation you have is not demand pull inflation. It is high cost of production induced inflation. In other words, a manufacturer, no matter the demand, will not want to sell below his cost of production because that will lead him to bankruptcy. He would rather fold up. So because the cost of production, this government by its policies, they've increased energy cost. You can see electricity tariffs increasing by more than 300%. They've increased the cost of fuel by more than 300%. They've depreciated the naira by more than 300%. And they've not increased wage. Wage is still 30,000. So nobody is demanding. And the cost of production is increasing. So meaning the producers must sell at a high cost because their cost is high. And yet they are not demanding. That is why all the foreign companies are leaving because they are collapsing. That's why all the manufacturing plants are collapsing because there is no demand and yet they cannot reduce the price. Simple economics. When the demand is high, the price goes up. When the supply is high, the price comes down. But in this case, the demand is going down and yet the price is going up. That's stagflation. So the correct policy would have been that you will be stimulating productivity because that's the problem. Not trying to reduce the access to money by manufacturers. You stimulate productivity. You be thinking about reducing energy costs, making money accessible to the manufacturers, but making sure you're channeling it to productive use. That will reduce their cost of production, reduce the price of goods, and then inflation will be reduced. It is not going to increase the demand because the money in the hands of the pockets of people have not increased. All the money in this government is being spent by less than 1% of the population. I give you an example. 6 point something billion naira to build car parks for National Assembly members. They just want to share money to their colleagues, their fellow politicians. 20 billion naira to refurbish the house of or build the house of chief of staff, an unelected office, who is more like a personal assistant to the president. 15 billion naira to build the house of the vice president. And then billions for the unelected first lady, just to eat. This is where the money is going. And this is less than 1% of the people. And their food is provided for them free of charge. Now, the people who are really the ones that will be demanding, you're still giving them 30,000 per month. That is why I say it's a year of misery, degradation, and deprivation. What can 30,000 do for a people that use 50,000 to fill up the tank of their car? Let me tell you, this government, in order to perpetuate the misery, is using 15 point something trillion naira to carry on one project that will not in any way contribute to ending the misery of the poor man. It will rather increase it.
You mean the coastal road?
Exactly. It will rather increase the misery. And it's bringing me to the issue of misplaced priorities. Nobody is saying that infrastructure eventually will not be good for the people. But when you misplace your priority, and I'm trying to tell you how it's only 1% of the people that are eventually going to have the money. In a depressed economy that you are already owing, using $10 billion to finance your budget, borrowed $10 billion. You had 27 trillion naira. 10 trillion of the 27 will be borrowed. Then you are granting a project of 15 point something trillion naira, one project. And it is to build roads, not to increase the productivity of the people.
But wouldn't that, the building of the construction of that road itself, wouldn't that create employment? I mean, we have Nigerians are going to work on that site. The ones to supply the sand, the ones to supply the rods, the ones to supply the cement. I mean, all the artisans, they are Nigerians. Isn't that a plus? Isn't that a form of creating employment?
Good. If you use that 15 trillion naira to repair all the roads that you already built that are dilapidated inside Nigeria, you will still achieve the same level of employment. Those roads, the traffic on them, because there are alternatives already to that new one you're building, you will still create that level of employment. And you would have created the level of employment around Nigeria as a whole, not just along a coastal line. So the issue here is we are talking about priorities. I first of all admitted that eventually the provision of any infrastructure will be good. But what is your priority? What are you looking for? Building a new road that will lead to destroying the infrastructure of people on that line, when you have already existing road that will not lead you to destroy the property of any Nigerian, that you could have repaired and ensured that you provided alternatives to those people before moving into that.
Okay.
Now, we're talking about the economy. This government in a year has borrowed more than 17 point something billion dollars. Meanwhile,
I think they're about 11.7 ahead of Buhari now in terms of their borrowing. They even borrowed more than Buhari has done.
good. Meanwhile, they say they want to remove oil subsidy to have more revenue to build infrastructure. That meant that when you remove oil revenue, you ought not to borrow anything at all.
Yeah.
Because automatically you have more revenue
According
than
to
your
you.
predecessor. And within a year, you have borrowed more than governments that did not remove oil subsidy. What does that tell you? They are using the revenue to sponsor their profligacy and their rapacity. If this government wants to succeed, it must elevate the love of country above their love for rapacity. It must put chains to its appetite. This is the most profligate government on earth. You came in, you removed fuel subsidy from the one. Not that you made any policy after removing the subsidy. So having that at the background, what are you doing having 48 ministers? When you know that you said you don't have revenue, and that's why you're punishing people. So it established the most bloated bureaucracy. 48 ministers. The poorest regime is operating with the largest bureaucracy. That's profligacy. Now, as I was telling you, when Abacha partially removed subsidy, he established a fund, PTF, which used the excess to build infrastructure for the people. When Jonathan partially removed subsidy, he established Shopee, Subsidy Reinvestment Program, which used the increased revenue to provide certain infrastructure. This government fully removed subsidy. It established nothing for the people, but is using the revenue to carry more than 1,000 of politicians to go to United Nations General Assembly using the revenue, to carry thousands of people to Dubai saying that they are looking for foreign investors. Meanwhile, the companies you already have are leaving. And they will come and tell us lies. That Dubai has agreed to change the visa ban policy. Lie. So this is what they are using their own money for, to enrich their people. They say they are doing humanitarian services, and 3.2 billion is being given to their fellow ministers in the name of consultancy services. Meanwhile, the vulnerable people in 4 states that they carved out 585 million, none will reach them because they've already paid it into private account. And those people that perpetrated such a thing are still going, working freely, paying people flight tickets from Abuja to Kogi, even when Kogi does not have any airport. That's why I say corruption. Have those people been brought to account? Good. That's why I said incompetence, because they don't even have knowledge of our problem. I analyze the economic problem when they are treating demand pull inflation, when we are having stagflation, when they ought to be stimulating productivity. So this government is lacking in knowledge, is lacking in charisma. Can't you see? Is lacking in participation. Now, let's talk about the minimum wage for you to understand, because these are the things that will help you when you remove subsidy to rebound the economy. Because the middle class, they are the people driving the economy.
Yeah, that's correct.
When this government removed subsidy, he said he was going to give the people wage award, and he said 35,000. So automatically, with the wage award and the minimum wage, that's 65,000 naira that they are giving to the people. How come you are now coming to the table saying you want to negotiate a minimum wage, and you're not even starting from the 65,000, which you're already giving them? You are now saying 40-something thousand, 38,000, 40-something thousand.
Last night they eventually agreed to 60.
Good.
Proposed 60, while Labour is saying 494.
Good. Now, the 60 they are saying is not even up to what they started paying them when they removed subsidy. Does it make sense?
No.
65,000 is what you started paying them when you removed subsidy. And then you are now coming to the table. Rather than starting from the 65,000, that is why it is an insult to their intelligence. I do not understand. Why? Because this government policy is not tilted towards the common man. It is tilted towards serving the appetite of the voracious leaders. That is why it's a government of misery, deprivation, and degradation. Everything about this country has been degraded. Do you talk about security? Now, the terrorists have now taken over territories where they command people to pay taxes, and they are now terrorizing the men in uniform instead. That means they have defeated people, the civilians. The civilians have become subservient to them. They are now taking on the uniformed people. When this government came in, the first thing it did is to provide its platform for people to start calling our military men thieves, to start denigrating them. And I warned them that is very dangerous. That what you do whenever you're in public is to pray to God to protect our troops. Anytime a leader talks in any part of the world, he said, may God protect our troops. But you're bringing people to be denigrating our men in uniform. And you're seeing the result. 17 were killed in Delta, 5 now in Aba, in Niger. A lot of them were killed.
Even Bono, some
communities. That one has been going on since 2009.
Some communities have been told to vacate.
Very good. So what I am telling you is that if this is not incompetence, then the whole idea of incompetence should be redefined. So in terms of security, you have seen what this government has done. And I don't need to tell you how many people have been kidnapped. They are uncountable. They are kidnapping even government officials. And when they do the kidnap, do you know what this government does? When the plateau people were being terrorized and kidnapped, 200 killed, they were in Lagos celebrating Christmas. When 200 and something were kidnapped, children were kidnapped in Kaduna, which they reduced to 137, and they've not told us how an incompetent government does not even know the number of children in their school. That when they were kidnapped, they didn't even know the number that were kidnapped. Later on, they said 137. They were in Niger State commissioning one airport. Couldn't even cancel it. Commissioning one airport that is built in the name of himself. That is anarchy, absence of authority, and non-recognition of authority. So in the area of security, you can see. So we talked about economy, security, international affairs. Immediately this president became the chairman of ECOWAS. Today ECOWAS is divided,
Broken.
completely. 3. And they want to form their own association. It has never happened.
Yes.
That is incompetence. Immediately you heard that a government has been overthrown. Because this is government, they talk before they think. You immediately went to the TV and say, you're giving them 7 days ultimatum to leave or you will take them out by force. Boko Haram, that has been there since 2009, you have not taken them out by force. You're threatening another sovereign country. You will take them out by force in 7 days. Meanwhile, a president ought to get the approval of the Senate before you can even allow one soldier to operate outside the country. But this is the president boasting that he would take out a government, foreign government, within 7 days. I don't need to tell you that we are still paying, the ECOWAS is still paying for that statement, ill-advised. Because even when he now lifted the sanction, the Niger Republic refused to lift the sanction because they no longer trust him. Anything he's doing. Can you imagine Niger Republic that whenever Nigeria sneezes, they catch cold? They turn back the delegation of this government that he sent to them. When Obasanjo was in power, Togo turned back its delegation and he single-handedly sanctioned Togo and leveraged Nigerians' influence on Togo that the leader came to Nigeria to beg. But now the leader is saying go to hell. And one of the reasons they allege is the illegitimacy of this government. Why would they submit to an illegitimate government? Maybe because of the wuru-wuru way they came to power. So the issue is that the last 1 year has been a year of disaster and catastrophe. Nothing to sing about it.
Okay. Thank you for the apt analysis so far given. But let me cast your mind back that during the election, almost all the leading candidates said that they would remove the fuel subsidy if elected into office. Now, in all the government, this current government does, do you think that the party, for instance, you supported, which is the Labour Party, and your principal, Mr. Peter Obi, would have probably done things differently if the election went the other way? Or do you think that any of these candidates would have done things differently from the way this government is doing it? And bearing in mind that actually the first subsidy removal was done by Buhari to commence first day of July 2023. But Tinubu made that, in some sense, some people call it a blip, a slip, to say fuel subsidy gone, and we have gone into abyss since then.
First of all, I said it before and I'm saying it again. I wouldn't have supported any candidate that said he would not remove subsidy. And the reason is that what it means is that the person would not have any plan to exit subsidy. Good. Subsidy came in the first place by incompetence and corruption.
Yes.
How can a nation that is the 6th largest supplier of crude oil that has 4 refineries built and was functioning and was the net exporter of oil before become 100% importer of refined products, and they are paying subsidy? How can? So any leader that is saying he will not remove subsidy means that he has made up his mind to be perpetually corrupt and incompetent. So what the leader should do is to remove corruption and incompetence, and we will produce and refine our oil, and there will be no need for subsidy. That was why I said that this government is subsidizing corruption and consumption rather than subsidizing productivity. NNPC promised you that by December last year, Port Harcourt refinery will be working. Is it working?
No.
Good. It took Dangote 3 years to build the largest refinery in the world. Give him even 5 years. But look at this government.
8 years of Buhari.
The preceding government. From 1999 going to more than 30 years, they've not been able to repair. I'm not talking about building a new one. Repair the 4 refineries. If we can build a new refinery in 3 years, largest in the world, we can repair our refineries in 1 year. If 17 point something billion this government has borrowed in a year, that they invested it in repairing the 4 refineries, by now we wouldn't be importing any crude or refined. So what I'm saying is, the best way to remove the subsidy is to repair our refineries, so that we will no longer import our oil, which we produce, the crude, and there will be no need for subsidy. So what Obi would have done, he has consistently said it, that he will shift emphasis from consumption to production. What Obi would have done is to increase the productivity of refined oil, and automatically the subsidy will go. But what this government is doing is to be subsidizing, in other words, continuing to 100% import, meaning the subsidy will continue. And by the depreciation of the naira, because that's what I call it, there's nothing like floating naira, because you can't float your currency. You must support your currency with productivity if you want it to be strong. There is nothing like trying to show up naira. No. In a capitalist society, the best way to have strong currency is to predicate it on strong economy, which means an effective and efficient productive base, productive industrial base, which will produce the goods and services desired by the people to satisfy and saturate local consumption, in other words, to be self-sufficient and to ensure a steady export. This is the secret of how you show up your currency. Not borrowing dollars and going to compete in trading with the BDC. And when they outsmart you, start chasing them with security agencies and start locking them up and start creating more unemployment. So this government, like I said, lacks knowledge. They don't understand the problem. So that's the issue of offering solution does not arise, because you have to understand the problem before you can offer solution. That is why I'm saying we would have done things differently in the issue of subsidy. When they removed it, I came on air within 24 hours. I said, no. Please, apart from the fact that this statement is illegal, because we still have till June 30th for the subsidy, you have to start governing by rule of law. You don't have any right to remove it at this time. And even as at that, be careful, because it will be unsustainable for you to remove it when you have not guaranteed supply and you have not removed monopoly. That the effect in the economy will make the results negatively unsustainable. And that's what is happening. Because before you remove subsidy, you would have to check all the factors of production and ensure that you improve and increase all of them uniformly, so that there won't be disequilibrium in the economy. You cannot change the cost of fuel so astronomically and the minimum wage is remaining where it is, because people cannot even afford to go to work. Fuel, the price of rice has gone up from about 20,000 to 80,000. Minimum wage 30,000 remaining. Inflation, food inflation is 40 something percent. That is on paper, because if you check from 20,000 to 80,000, that's about 300%, which is more realistic because the cost of fuel increased by 300%, the depreciation of naira increased by 300%, the interest rate is increasing. So you cannot just say for something percent. The cost of food has increased by almost 300%. You see the logic.
Yeah.
So everything about this government is they are not deep in understanding problem. They talk before they think. They issue policy that is unrealistic. They flip-flop on it, change it the next day. And uncertainty is killing the economy. Nobody knows what this government is doing. That is why the people are leaving. The companies are leaving. The only thing remaining to leave is this government. If the people are leaving Nigeria because their livelihood is unsustainable, if the companies are leaving Nigeria because they can no longer operate because of a toxic environment, this government should be honorable enough to live with them so that Nigeria can have a breath of fresh air.
Ah, la, 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 la.